Now let's take a look at professional mindset examples. Professionals understand history. Professionals understand this very important piece of information right here. 21st century markets are not the markets of our ancestors. Globalization, computerization, financial engineering have permanently changed the investing paradigm. So professionals know this on a cellular level. Whereas if you go back to the questions that we had before, it was all about, which stock do I buy? What do I buy? That's the kind of thinking from like the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, where we had stockbrokers call us up at home and say, "Hey, hey, Mr. Johnson, I know that you have, X number of dollars that you'd like to invest. How about you buy Coca-Cola or Pepsi or something like this?" And people would call us at home and recommend a stock. This was all the way up until like the late 80s, and in the 90s is where it started to change. And at the turn of the century is when it really kind of hit critical mass. It really hit escape velocity thanks to broadband internet. Retail investors that were entering the market grew exponentially at this time. And at the same time, people were there was no real way, like right up until the dot bomb crash of 2000 2001, there was no real way you could lose money. Everybody who jumped in the stock market was just winning, like as you can see with this incline right here, this uptrend right here from 1995 to 2000, right? You really couldn't lose. And so anybody who jumped in the market that was early enough just got to jump on this bandwagon and felt like, oh my God, how this is an amazing run that we're having. And to sum up the next two crashes together, from this point, you had the dot bomb crash, and it took 8 years to recover to this point, which means for 8 years all you did was recover. You didn't make any money. Professionals know this, whereas the novice would think, I lost some, but I'm making it back, and they feel a sense of relief. The professional investor understands, like, well, I mean, I would never play it this way, where I go up and down with the market, because that means for 8 years I make 0% return. We had another crash in 2008 that took 6 years to recover from. So for a grand total of about 14 years, you made no money. You went down with the market, you recovered, you crashed with the market again, and you recovered. A professional investor would never invest this way. They wouldn't call themselves a professional if they were investing this particular way. But in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't that big a deal because recovery periods were very short. 1 year, 3 years, and this one was kind of bad. This was 6 years. The reason that it takes much longer to recover nowadays is globalization, computerization. There's a lot more people in the game. There's a lot more algorithms that are making the drops much more harsher than they ever were before. If you're investing in the 21st century, bringing in 20th century mentality is a recipe for losing. Just think of it in any other form of technology. Think of your phone. Think of how you talk to people on the phone these days. In the 70s and 80s, if your phone rang, you had to walk to it because it wasn't always in your pocket. It didn't travel with you. And you didn't even know who was calling you. And you would pick up the phone every time, not knowing who was calling you. That's the kind of world we lived in back then. So imagine how different picking up a phone call is now. Does anyone even pick up a phone call anymore? We have apps specifically designed to screen phone calls now. That's the difference in paradigm from last century to this century in just something as simple as making phone calls. Now imagine something as complex as global financial markets and world economics. It's a completely different game.